Hey YouTube, it's Evan Magician 34. I've decided to do something a little different, kind of just casual fun. This is something I think I'm going to do from time to time now. I'm calling it Best of the Worst. What it is I'm going to take cards that are considered to be like among the worst cards printed in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm going to try to build decks around them. And not just any decks, but like quasi-playable decks that should even be a little fun. And so I'm going to start with one of my favorite weird, terrible cards. It's an oldie, but a goodie. Of course, you've read the title, so you already know what it is. But it is Final Destiny. For those of you who aren't old bees, Final Destiny is just a normal spell card that costs 5 cards out of your hand. You have to discard 5 cards to pay for it. And that doesn't count the Final Destiny itself, of course. So it's a 6-card investment. And it destroys every card on the field. Not just your opponent's side, which probably still wouldn't warrant the 6-card loss, but it destroys both sides. It's horrible. This card will almost always cost you, I mean, obviously the 6 cards, but probably like at least 7 or 8. So very hard to build around, almost never worth it. A lot of times you, in a normal deck, would draw it and of course not even be able to pay for it. Easily one of the worst cards you would think you could ever have. So I've decided to take on the challenge and see what I can do with it. And feel free to mess around with this, but I think this deck could actually hold its own. Might not win any tournaments, maybe a local or something, but anyway, I thought the best way to take advantage of it was cards that like to produce extra cards under many circumstances. And Goblin Zombie is certainly one of them. So 2 copies of Goblin Zombie. Whether he's on the field or whatever, he's gonna be getting you some cards. So, because he's also searchable, which helps maintain your cards. 1 copy of Pyramid Turtle. You know what he does. Just 1 copy of Zombie Master. You're going to search for him a lot, but obviously since he costs you a card, if you've just Final Destinied, you don't really want to top deck him. 1 copy of Shootin' Doji, because he can draw you extra cards when you have almost nothing else, which after Final Destiny activates, that's going to be the case most likely. He's very searchable. 1 copy of Mizuki. 1 copy of Plague Spreader. Mizuki and Plague Spreader, both cards you actually want to see sent to your grave, so you don't mind pitching them out of your hand. There is 1 copy of Paladin of Cursed Dragon. He's in here as a target for Goblin Zombie, and he also interacts with a card I'm going to show you in just a little bit. He's a good beat stick you can top deck off your deck and whatnot too. So I picked him over Goku N largely because he doesn't have that drawback if you top deck him or something like that. And you will be facing top deck mode quite often in this deck. You also have 1 copy of Mystic Tomato. He can get your Goblin Zombie, and he can also get this guy, Sangan. Awesome addition to this deck. Gets you all kinds of useful things, and of course doesn't mind getting blown off the field. And speaking of stuff that replaces itself when it gets blown up on the field by sending things to your hand, 2 copies of Dimensional Alchemist. Lots of cards in this deck, including ones you've already seen, like to remove stuff from play. So this can bring it back for later recycling and puts it in your hand in the process. Stuff like Plague Spreader and Mizuki. This guy can theoretically actually allow you to activate Final Destiny twice in the same game, which is important in case you get hit by something like My Body's a Shield, which could be disastrous otherwise. Card Trooper, 1 more card that replaces itself. Necro Gardener loves to go to the grave, of course. 1 copy of Trueborn Frog, same reasoning. There's Marshmallon. Not a bad top deck after you've just blown everything. Same goes for Spirit Reaper. Of course, he's also a zombie, and ripping cards out of your opponent's hand can be nice when you've just cleaned their field off, on the off chance you actually have a card left over in your hand after you do Final Destiny. Gore is an amazing top deck afterward. You can just pass, your opponent will think you drew 1 card that was junk and unplayable, and then you can surprise them with Gores. And believe it or not, 2 copies of Caius. Plenty of ways to get extra fodder for tributes in this deck, so definitely 2 copies on that guy. Good removal, because we actually do plan to win, not just fire Final Destiny. And we also run Chaos Sorcerer, an excellent top deck. You'll almost surely have a light in the grave after you Final Destiny, so definitely there. We also run Dark Armed Dragon. It's pretty easy to manipulate your darks, actually, and he too can be a good top deck. And if not, if the situation's not right, hey, you know, he'll still feed Final Destiny. So that's your monsters. And since we're theming around the card, we are going to run 3 copies of Final Destiny. Probably the only time you may actually maybe just be happy to see it. And boy, if they don't have Infernity Barrier, you could just devastate Infernities with this deck now, couldn't you? Okay, maybe not even then, but still. Anyway, Heavy Storm, MST, pretty straightforward on those guys. Brain Control. This deck loves to bring Plague Spreader back for extra innings, preferably not with his own effect, of course. But, yeah, that's the reason for that. Swords, another good top deck card. Also, if you have to play out your hand a little bit, you can hide behind that to build back up to having 5 cards to discard. Book of Life, pretty straightforward on that one. Allure of Darkness, just getting you those right cards, lots of darks, blah blah blah. Not too surprisingly, we're running 2 copies of Pot of Avarice. It's a great way to +1 yourself, take advantage of all those monsters in your grave, etc. It's a good recovery card too. Probably the #1 thing you want to actually see right after you activate Final Destiny, like on your next turn. So, we also run Burial from a Different Dimension, needless to say. Call of the Haunted, another good solid choice for this deck. Mirror Force, Torrential, both of those pretty self-explanatory. And last but not least, we do of course run 2 copies of Bottomless Trap Hole, another good defensive card that can buy you time, get you a path to clear cut to your opponent, stuff like that. The extra deck's pretty flexible, just the usual staples like with most extra decks. 2 copies of Stardust, 1 copy of Red Dragon Archfiend, 1 Colossal Fighter, 1 Thought Ruler Archfiend, 1 Black Rose Dragon. You'll be sinking for 6 more than you will anything else probably in this deck. Psychic Life Transfer, X-Saber Urbellum, and speaking of sinking for 6, Goyo Guardian, Bryonac Dragon of the Ice Barrier, and remember you can of course recycle these with Pot of Avarice too after you sink. Doom Kaiser Dragon, on the off chance you manage to get a Plague Spreader in your opponent's grave, this guy is, needless to say, amazing under those circumstances. There's also Gaia Knight, good solid 6-star. Flamva Urquiza, he can be really good when both players are in top deck mode, actually. Assuming you don't have any better alternatives. Then there's Android, and last but not least, Ally of Justice, Catastor. So, there we go. The best out of the worst, so to speak. And who knows what we'll be picking next, but it'll definitely be a quote-unquote horrible card. If you have any suggestions, hey, leave them in comments. You never know. I might take your suggestion and build a wacky deck around another crazy bad card. Try this yourself. It's a lot of fun. Flexes you out, forces you to think when you build a deck and when you play people. And it's a lot of fun for when you're just kicking back with your friends. So anyway, until next time, rate, comment, subscribe, and of course, enjoy.